Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of I'll Call You Right Back podcast with me, your host. My name is Chad Medved. This is my show. I appreciate you being here this week. First thing is first, this podcast is proudly sponsored by Turner Dairy Farms. They are the creators of Turner's Premium Iced Tea, and I always say that there's no better weather to enjoy an ice-cold Turner's Premium Tea than Pittsburgh summertime, right? 80 plus degrees, and it's prime. You know, you walk in that bodega, you walk over to that cooler carrying the Turner's products, you grab yourself an ice-cold thug jug of Turner's tea, and you crack that baby open, and then you just starting to feel better about your life. And I'm proud to say I'm sponsored by Turner's. You know, it means a lot to me, but a lot of good stuff that's happening. You know, this past week was pretty wild. I turned 32. It was, it's a good time. But on top of my birthday, 4th of July. So, things are spotty nowadays in America. Not the most fitting time to celebrate for some people. But regardless, I had a long weekend. It was very enjoyable. Went and rode my bike with my buddy. Had a delicious breakfast burrito at Oak Hill Post. Absolutely delicious. It stuck out in my mind to where I made a note in my phone to bring it up in the intro because of how good it was. But yeah, Oak Hill Post over towards like the Mount Lebanon area. I don't know. Don't quote me. It might be in a different city line, whatever, but it's in that area and it's delicious. But after we had that breakfast burrito, me and my buddy who came up from Atlanta, we went and hit a quick 30 miles on the bike, riding around Pittsburgh. You can't beat a bicycle ride around the city. I often talk about it on here, but it was a beautiful day. It was a little hot on Friday, but you ride around the city and it really is a spectacle. We are spoiled as a city to have bike lanes like we do. They might not be everyone's favorite thing in the world, but I like to ride a bike. I like to pedal a bike. The bike lanes are, they're okay by me. And if you also like to pedal around the city, you would enjoy them as well. If you haven't, go rent a bike and go take a ride around the city. You might be surprised. You might surprise yourself. But after the bike ride, we ended up at Cinderland's Warehouse, had a couple of drinks, had some great food down there. That's another place that I've been frequenting that I put on the notes list to bring up in the intro because, they have some good beer there. I'm not the most educated beer aficionado, but they have some pretty good beer. But their food, impeccable. They have a smash burger that I really think is my favorite burger in the city. I really do. I had it for a second time on Friday, and it was just so damn good. But yeah, just a spectacular time. Had some friends there and we just celebrated and it was really great. And on top of, the birthday celebration and everything like that, I get to come back to work and sit down, and I get the opportunity to sit down with the one and only Rick Sebak. So this week I sit down with a legend, Rick Sebak. He is a person that everyone really knows in Pittsburgh. He is, he's known for his docu-series. He's known for Kennywood Memories. He's known for WQED, which he is, yesterday, July 6th, was Rick's 35th anniversary at WQED. He sprinkled that in our conversation, just 35 years there. What a tenure, but had the privilege to speak with him back in 2020, and we talked about, Kennywood and how he came up, and, that was more of a, that was kind of whenever I was still green at podcasting. Now I got a little bit more of a professional of a studio, so I had the honor of having him back into the studio to have a proper conversation, but this week we talk about, you can imagine, but we talk about a plethora of things. Rick tells me about how he has been keeping busy during the pandemic. He is, he's all over the city all the time. So in the pandemic, you're kind of locked away. But Rick was talking about the series that he was kind of producing from his front porch. But after that, we get into, kind of some Pittsburgh factoids that I really wasn't hip to it. Rick educated me and told me that Pittsburgh used to be considered the transplant capital of the world back in the late 80s, which I thought was pretty wild. He said at one point that there was more organ transplants in Pittsburgh than there was in the entire world. But I thought that was pretty wild. Then he goes on to talking about George Romero's connection with Fred Rodgers. And then, we talk a little bit about his journey with his health. Rick recently lost 150 pounds. He looks absolutely amazing, but, he just turned 69 years old, and he's, he looks amazing. And, it's just this is something that recently happened in the last couple years, his kind of, his health and making better choices. And we kind of get into that. And, obviously we're talking about Kennywood and all the good things like that. And then after we have this great conversation, Rick invites me for a joyride in his Mini Cooper. He is a man who loves his vehicle. As you follow him on social media at Rick Sebak, you could see he loves his Mini Cooper. And I've never ridden in one, and he asked if I wanted to go for a ride, and who would turn down an opportunity to take a joyride with Rick Sebak? And I mean, blows my mind that this podcast that I started years ago has led me to opportunities like that. But I would like to say thank you to Rick Sebak for all he has done for Pittsburgh and all he continues to do for the city. I appreciate him very much. He is someone that I look up to as an interviewer, and I just really appreciate, the legacy that he has built over the last 35 years. Just at WQED was 35 years, but he has a career beyond that. So the guy has been working and putting out quality content since. But much appreciated for everyone. I will quit talking your ear off. Without further ado, episode 211 of I'll Call You Right Back podcast with Mr. Rick Sebak.
I gotta use the telephone.
Hello?
Telephone.
I'll call you right back.
Telephone.
I'll Call You Right Back podcast. What size shoe do you wear?
13.
13.
That's why I looked to see what those were. 11.
Yeah, those ones are actually a half size. I usually wear an 11, but I don't know. Nikes are weird. I'll buy some pair of Nikes, and they run very thin, and my foot won't fit in them, and then I have to size up. But yeah, those are 11 and a half. They work well. You were the talk of the party. Absolutely.
Because of my shoes.
Absolutely. I noticed it as soon as you walked in. I was like, there's no way that because I didn't see you at first.
Yeah, and I saw them just on another guy that there's these two guys that I occasionally have dinner with, and one of them had that on. I said, I love those shoes.
Yeah, I remember Zach Edgar from Zed's in the South Side, which is a vintage and resale shop. They came over and they were like, dude, Rick Sebak is wearing some Air Max Bacons right now at your party. And I was like, that's crazy. I got some headphones this time. It's a little bit more official than last time.
I never use headphones.
No?
Yeah, seldom. I mean, we have them in our announce booth, but
I feel like I enjoy it more just because it keeps me accountable as far as like, you could hear if you're pulling away or anything like that.
It does sound good.
I appreciate that. This is, like I said, this is more official than the last time. Last time I kicked my wife out and we were just in my living room, gorilla style.
They were on like couches, I think.
In a couch, on a couch, and now a little bit better of a situation I'm in, and I feel like it was time to have you over for a proper sit down. But you were mentioning before I hit record that you should have listened to what we talked about before.
Right.
But I did. I was cringing about it because that was 2.5 years ago. And
it's before the pandemic.
It was. So the day that our episode dropped was January 16th, 2020. It was episode 101.
Right. I remember we were right at 100, and you've done 100 since then and more.
I've done, yeah. You're going to be episode 210 now.
Wow.
I've been busy. But yeah, it's weird because it was a couple months right before the pandemic, and
I don't think we even thought about it.
No, it wasn't even. I don't even think it was mentioned. I mean, I'm sure
it was probably in over in China, and we just didn't know about it.
Yeah, I think that was the point where it was
Wuhan.
it was still like, oh, we heard about this craziness that's going on over there. No way it'll ever get over here. And here we are 2.5 years later, and it's still a main thing in life right now.
It's one of those weird things on Facebook memories. You get reminded of things. And under Mayor Peduto, there was a meeting, and he asked me if I would come down. And I'm blanking on the name of that. There's an African American sculptress here in town. She's really great, and she and I were invited to be sort of like cultural ambassadors to this meeting with our sister city in China, Wuhan.
That's our sister city?
That is Pittsburgh's sister city in China, Wuhan. It's way, way bigger than we are. But I guess, like, status-wise, maybe similar. It's not like the biggest city.
Yeah, not the smallest.
Right. And so, And so we met with some people from Wuhan. I mean, but that's probably 10 or 12 years ago, maybe even more.
That's strange, though.
Maybe I'm extending Peduto's. I think it was under Peduto.
I mean, do we have anything to do with it, or is it just like the comparison of like what type of city it is?
I'm never really sure how they select sister cities, but
yeah,
it always fascinates me because I'd totally forgotten about that.
Yeah.
But Facebook memories reminded me, meeting in the thing, and it just said, with representatives from Wuhan, China.
Yeah, interesting thing Facebook memories are. Could be a grim thing, or it could be
that's a good thing.
Yeah, a good thing.
Yeah.
Now, it's interesting to think about like us and our conversation before that, because like I said, we weren't even, this wasn't even a thing, but for you, something that you do is, I mean, you're out in the world. Rick around here. So, I mean, like that's it's such a weird thing and I hate even always bringing it up all the time as far as like, talking about the pandemic, because it's always just like, it's been what everyone's been talking about the last couple of years. But that was one of the things that people asked is like, how does someone that is in your profession navigate something like that? Because realistically, you're interviewing new people, random people, kind of curating stories that you're coming up with, and that's kind of what you have to do, is be out in the streets, so to say.
Right. I mean, I always say Pittsburgh is endlessly fascinating. So, there's always new stuff to find and new joys. And so that's what I keep doing.
How do you do that whenever you're shut down in a pandemic? That was the question, is like, how did you navigate what you were doing during this pandemic?
Well, you look for other things, I think. Yeah, you're right. I wasn't out and about. I remember I did do a thing. One day I drove out to that great butcher shop in Washington County, Heritage Craft Butchers in Mariana, and I made a little video. My cameraman, Frank, had taught me how to use a GoPro, and I put it on the front of my car. And I thought, I'm just going to make a little road show.
Yeah.
And it was really fun. And that was during the pandemic. And, I was by myself in the car, and that was fine. And, I just stopped in. I remember I put mask on before I went in. In fact, I think in the little video, I had to go back to my car to get my mask.
Yeah.
Things slowed down, but I did a lot of videos from my front porch. And sometimes they were, conglomerations from past shows and stuff like that. But,
Yeah, you definitely still were able to put out some content. It was interesting how everyone pivoted, whether it be a chef or, someone that owns a small business or someone like yourself. I mean, it really cultivated an interesting bone in people's bodies to like try to, pivot and make some stuff happen while we were all trying to figure this out.
Yeah, and we survived. I mean, I guess so far.
Yeah, I guess so far. You, you look fantastic. I mean, in this past couple years, you were on a pretty intense journey, I would say, right?
Yeah. Well, you know what it is. I also blame the pandemic.
Yeah.
Because I had the time, and one day in the mail, I got a piece of junk mail addressed to resident. It's a postcard, a big postcard, and I'd gotten them before. It said, "Do you want to be in a study at UPMC?" And I usually just throw them away.
Yeah.
But as I looked at it and just glanced at it, it had 3 criteria. And I thought, wow, I meet the criteria. I was over 60, I was overweight, and my doctor had used the term pre-diabetic with me, which I think with most people who have any sort of weight, that's it shows up in your blood work.
Absolutely.
And so I thought, well, that's kind of cool. And I'm here at my house. What am I going to do? And so I called and I said, I got this thing and, I meet the criteria. And they said, well, we'd like to meet you. You have to come to Belfield Towers in Oakland. And that's a whole nother story. But, we had to wear masks and everything, but we had to go and they took blood and they weighed us and measured us and did all this stuff. And then they said, yes, you fit all our criteria. We'd like to have you. And so I was in a group of 12 and it's called DPP, Diabetes Prevention Program. And it started by just becoming more aware of what you eat, writing everything down, counting calories. We had to keep a little notebook for I think we kept those notes. I mean, we wrote down everything we ate for 18 weeks or something like that.
Wow.
And then, they encourage you, if this is working, you might want to continue. And I did for a while. But it really changed the way I ate. If you're watching calories and trying to keep to a certain number, you realize that you make decisions.
Yeah. Once you see it all on paper.
Yeah. And, they weren't very strict. And I think that was also a plus. It wasn't very structured. It was loose enough. And it was a phone call once a week, not even a Zoom call. But we never met. I've never met the other people. We were 12 people.
Yeah.
And, they asked us to talk every now and then. Said, does anybody want to share anything that's happening? And, you get to know little things about people and cringe at others. But I don't know, I took to it.
Yeah.
And so I started to lose weight and it seemed to be working. And so I've kept at it. And after a while, then they started to encourage you to do some exercise. And I started walking.
Yeah.
And
you said you walk 3 miles a day?
I walk 4 miles a day.
4 miles a day.
Yeah. I mean, I have so far, I'm on my Fitbit tells me I'm on a 110-day streak, I think, right now.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Do you navigate all random places or do you just kind of stick to the same loop?
No. I don't like the same loop, but I'm always on a similar loop, I would say, because except when I go to my sister's in North Carolina and I walk on the beach, and actually I can walk on the beach or I have a loop around her suburban development in North Carolina. Also from her suburban house into the town where she lives is exactly 2 miles. So I can walk that 2 miles in and 2 miles back, and that's 4 miles.
That's fantastic.
And I've lost 150 pounds.
150?
Yeah, I can't believe it.
It is amazing.
Yeah, and so it and I can only say that this week, but it's been, I've lost a few more pounds, and I thought, well, I can really legitimately now say I've lost 150. I've been saying 140 for a while.
Yeah.
But
that's a very huge milestone.
It's a whole person.
That's a whole person, especially someone who is, a lot of your career is based in food.
Right. And that hasn't changed. I'll say that I drink less.
Yeah.
Because when you start writing it down and everything, I realized I got far more pleasure out of the food than out of the drink.
Oh, yeah. Would rather eat your calories.
I would rather eat my calories than drink them. But at the same time, yesterday for the 4th of July, I had a glass of wine.
Yeah.
And I'll have a beer if that's what everybody's having a beer.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm teetotaling. It's just that, I really keep an eye on it.
Yeah, it's better to allocate it in the ways that you like. I would much rather eat some chips and dip than a stout beer.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
That's exactly the way I've been thinking.
Yeah, that's true. And I have a problem with. I definitely have a problem with portions. I like something, and I just if it's there, I'm going to eat it. So that's it's a struggle. It's definitely a struggle.
Yeah, but you know what? Actually, I'm. And it's kind of weird to say this, but I'm surprised at how easy it's been.
Yeah.
And so, I haven't felt deprived at any point.
I think it's all mental. You know what I mean? It's you're really battling your mind. If I'm sitting there on the couch and I'm like, man, I got some Martin's chips in there. I might as well go get some chips while I'm watching this show. And then you're like, oh, I'm going to eat these chips. And then you're just your mind is on the show.
Right.
And you look down and the chips are gone. And you're just like, oh, well, that ain't no good.
Yeah.
But that really is fantastic. Now, I mean, do you feel, I would assume you feel amazing.
Amazing? No, probably not, but good. Yeah.
Good?
Yeah. I mean, I still walk, but I'm still wobbly. And yes, it's all in your mind. And I since I fell, which is 3 years ago, and I ruptured my quadriceps tendon in my left leg, and I was in the hospital for 7 weeks, and then did months and months of physical therapy. I still don't walk perfectly or good. I walk slowly.
Yeah.
Sometimes people say, "Hey, can I walk with you?" And I'll say, "Nope." It's strictly a solitary, activity because I walk slowly.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody on the streets passes me by.
March to the beat of your own drum.
You're right.
That's great.
I put my phone in my pocket and I listen to it like a transistor radio. I listen to podcasts. I listen to NPR. I listen to NPR podcasts.
Now, could I ask how old you are?
Yeah, I'm 69. I just turned 69 last month.
Now, I mean, for you to be 69 and go through this journey these last couple of years and lose 150 pounds, it's very motivating. It's motivating, I would assume, for, 69 years old, you could really just write it off. You're just like, I'm 69. I'm going to be this way.
Well, I'll tell you, and this was not a small consideration, is I was hyper aware that my dad passed away when he was 68. And I think even when I saw that thing, I thought like, I should be healthier than I am, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so, when I reached 69 in June, I just said, yes, sounds good. But I also know that both of my grandfathers died when they were 69. So I got to make another year.
Yeah. Now, I'm sure, everything you've been putting out, you've been pretty busy. I see you're doing vinyl nights. You're making
that's
your
totally
way around.
For fun.
I know, but that's fantastic. It's something to do.
And that came about during the pandemic as well. I'm friends with Pete Kurzweg, who, along with Adam and Pete's brother Matt, own Hidden Harbor and Independent Brewing in Squirrel Hill, 2 bars side by side. And they also own Lorelei in East Liberty, and they've recently opened Golden Age in Homestead, a new brewery. So even though it's called Independent Brewing, they don't brew there. But now they are brewing at Independent Brewery, called Golden Age Brewery in Homestead. And I'm impressed with all of them.
Yeah. And
I am impressed with these guys. Adam and Pete seem to run the 2 places, and I love them. And, they're always kind to me. Adam invented, he named a drink after me.
Really?
That's how I met them. They contacted me and said, we've got a new drink. It was right when I was doing PBS shows about breakfast.
Yeah.
And they made essentially an old-fashioned, but not with simple syrup, with maple syrup. And they put a piece of candied bacon on it.
Oh, wow.
So it was like a breakfast drink.
Yeah.
And they called it a gentleman's breakfast or the Rick Sebak. And then they contacted me and said, do you mind? And I said, no, I kind of love it.
Yeah.
And I went by and I met them and, and then I started. At that point, before the Fern Hollow Bridge collapsed, they were exactly halfway home. So if I left WQED and drove halfway 2 miles into Squirrel Hill, I could stop at those bars, have a drink, and go home. Now with the bridge gone, you got to go different ways. I can't go past their place.
Yeah. It's a whole different loop.
But while I'm sitting at home and, looking at, things, I noticed one day on Facebook that it was Pete Kurzweg's birthday. And I had just made some chocolate chip cookies. I make these things called cowboy cookies or everything cookies or whatever. And I texted Pete and I said, hey, are you there at the bar? And he said, yeah, but if you're going to come early. And I said, like 4 o'clock. He said, perfect. And so I went up at 4 o'clock, took him a package of cookies and to say happy birthday. And we sat outside. The bar wasn't open, because it was during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And, we had a beer and I gave him the cookies and he said, I got to go because I'm playing records tonight. And I said, what do you mean you're playing records tonight? He goes, well, that's part of the thing that we do here on Wednesday nights. We play records. And I said, I want to do that.
Yeah, it's a fun thing to do.
And he said, we'd love to have you.
My apologies for the dog.
Not a problem. And so I said, I want to do that. And he said, anytime. And so like a week or two later, I said, I'm coming and I'm bringing my own records because I've never gotten rid of my vinyl. It's my collection.
Yeah.
Pete has a big bookcase full of his vinyl. But
your own collection is your own collection.
Right. And I mean, but all of these factors have also led to the fact that I've become, a nice way to put it would be, I've become a regular at Goodwill shops.
Yeah.
First, because I needed new shirts. I had lost so much weight. The shirts, I was wearing a 5X.
That's a good point. That's a whole different wardrobe.
A whole different wardrobe.
Wow.
And when I was at my sister's in North Carolina at Christmas time, this past Christmas, one day it rained and, we couldn't really do anything. She said, let's just spend the day going to Goodwill's. And I said, what do you mean? She said, Goodwill shops, let's just go and check things out because they always have cool things and you never know what you're going to find. Great. And then I realized, oh my God, like there's a lot of junk and there's a lot of stuff you got to go through, but there are also nice things.
Hidden gems
and men's shirts.
Hidden gems and men's shirts. Honestly, a Goodwill shop is the greatest place you can go to buy any dress or work clothes or golf clothes.
So I've lost a lot of weight and inches and all of that. And I bought one new suit because I had to go to a fancy wedding.
One new suit.
And everything else, all the clothes I have on are from Goodwill.
I mean, I feel like it's an accomplishment, right? I mean, that's not anything to look down upon. I mean, I love a good deal.
No, I mean, shirts are $5.
Yeah.
And now,
and they're good shirts.
I mean, I was having to pay a lot more than that online even when I was big. I would watch for shirts to go on sale and stuff. And those guys still, send me ads and stuff.
Of course.
But I just say, forget it. I'm down. I can wear an XL now.
Yeah, that's amazing. It really is great. For you to now, you said that you were going around to Goodwill's. Was that always something that you were interested in? Like whenever you were growing up, you weren't like a flea market person?
Well, a flea market person, yeah.
Yeah.
But I also realized that there's somewhat, I go, I guess, in cycles. I mean, for a while, I was aware of this on my trip. I've already been to the beach this summer, back down to my sister's.
Yeah.
And I realized, for a long time, I searched for antique malls just because I like the idea that, here's a big collection of a lot of different vendors.
Absolutely.
With all kinds of stuff, and I like that. But since my sister sort of encouraged me to go to the Goodwills, I now prefer a Goodwill.
I feel like that the reason a Goodwill is a little bit better is because, right down on 19, there's a little antique mall and it's a consignment shop. They have little allotted areas, but realistically, it's either extremely astronomically priced because people believe that this jade ashtray that they got years ago is worth $200, or it's just junk. But a Goodwill is kind of like, there's like layers of filters. There's humans touching that beforehand. So I feel like that, people are kind of sifting out the absolute trash.
Well, and vinyl at a Goodwill is 79 cents.
Oh, yeah. It doesn't matter what it is.
An LP, and there is a lot of trash.
Yeah.
There's like Eddie Arnold and Andy Williams and Montavani out the wazoo. But there's also unexpected things. And that's what, I look for. And I'll go through a big stack of LPs. For some reason, they always put them down by the floor.
Yeah.
So I always look for a chair in the chair part of the Goodwill and then drag it over and sit down. And but it's become my hobby.
Yeah.
Going to Goodwills.
It's fun to do stuff. Do you find yourself ever having problems with collecting things? I'm a collector.
Yes, totally. I'm a hoarder.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call myself a collector.
I know.
I'm a hoarder.
I don't like to throw that sort of term around because some people might they get offended by it. My mother, she's on her way. That's like her pastime. She's retired. What her and her mother like to do, they like to go to the boutique, as they call it. That's the Goodwill store. They have one up on 19 that's like bins, and it's like 49 cents a pound.
Oh, yeah, that's like a Goodwill outlet.
A whole different
I
thing.
don't go that far.
Oh, well, they do. My grandmother goes there, sifts through all these things, and it's not like she finds junk. It's good stuff, but it's It's just stuff that
a
she
lot of
doesn't.
work.
It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of stuff she don't need, and it just accumulates. All this stuff is good. All of it's useful. It's like she buys for all of us for whenever we're gonna inevitably ask it, but we never ask it. But hey, what can you do?
Well, it's just and in Goodwills they have this. All of them share around here anyway. I can't remember when I was down in the Carolinas if I heard the same announcements as this man's voice, and he tells you how good it is that you're at the Goodwill.
Yeah,
because you're helping the planet. Because you're not doing new stuff, and it takes 750,000 gallons to make one T-shirt or something. And if you can get it at the Goodwill,
it's true. That's good. I feel like people just don't know about those statistics. So it's like once you hear about them, you're like, that's pretty crazy. I talked to her name is Myrna. She runs the Allegheny Cleanways.
Okay.
And they specialize in cleaning illegal dump sites and river cleanups around here. And for people that just live here that don't really have an idea what that is, it's easy to just let that kind of pass over. But once you read the numbers, they've cleaned up 5,400,000 pounds of trash just in Allegheny County themselves. Over 41,000 tires that have been discarded in the woods, and
they roll into the river.
In the river, in the woods, anything like that.
Okay.
But they have actual logs of these, because one of my questions is, who do you have counting these tires? And every cleanup site, they really log everything, and they it's important for them to put that number down. And I feel like it's so interesting to hear that, because you could say I could go up to someone and say, man, there's so much trash in the woods over on the Montour Trail here, and that sounds one sort of way. But if you say, there's 47 tires just in a 50-foot area, that adds a little bit more weight to that.
Right.
But it's crazy to hear them numbers. But
people don't know what to do with tires.
They don't know what to do. That's what 20 minutes of our conversation was. It was insane. But I full circle, I wanted to have you come back on here, and I wanted to talk about a few things that I thought were interesting that we didn't get to touch on in the beginning. One thing that I felt that was very important that I had on my list to bring up, that someone that was a listener question as well, that just said, ask him about the time his sister met Charles Manson. Now, you told me this story at the episode 200 party, and it was fascinating. It was also a very crazy time. I was talking to people, but you brought this up, and I would like to hear it if you would be so
No,
inclined
my
to
sister
tell me.
never met Charles Manson.
No.
My sister's partner, Bill.
Bill, that is it. Bill. Yes.
Is from McMecken, West Virginia.
Okay.
He is the youngest of 7 children. And they didn't live in the town of McMecken. They lived in a holler east of town. And it was just their house and the house where an old woman lived with her grandson or her nephew or something.
Yeah.
And my sister had been dating Bill for a while. My sister worked as a elementary school gifted student teacher in Sistersville, West Virginia. She met Bill while she was down there. He was a coal miner. Mm-hmm. And they started dating, and my sister moved to Texas, and Bill decided he'd have enough of the coal mines, and he went down and worked in a salt mine in Louisiana. And then when my sister started to do really well and everything, they decided to move together, and they moved to town halfway between Dallas and Fort Worth, Plano, Texas. And they lived there for a while, and then they moved to New England. My sister kept moving up, and she jumped from being a teacher to being someone who worked in what I call reading and writing for rich kids.
Yeah.
Tutoring services afterwards. She worked for the Reading Game, and then she worked for Sylvan Learning Centers. And anyway, she'd been with Bill for a while, and everybody loves Bill. And my parents both love Bill tremendously and everything, and he knows how to fix things and all of that. And one time we were at my mom's and something came up, and my sister said, "You don't know about Bill." And I said, "No." And she said, "About Bill growing up." And I said, "I know nothing about Bill growing up." And that's when she started to tell me about McMecken and the house and the holler and all of this. And then it's revealed that the guy who lives with his grandmother is Charles Manson. And Bill grew up having Sunday dinner with Charles Manson because they would invite them over for Sunday dinner. After church, Charles Manson and his grandmother or his great aunt, I can't remember, but he was there because his mom was in the Moundsville prison.
My goodness.
And so I did the math. Bill was very young. Bill was like 5.
Yeah.
And he's in his 70s now. So, but, he knew, what happened was my sister found a picture.
Yeah.
Bill's eldest sister, so there's 7 kids, Bill's the youngest. The sister who was the eldest, they stopped to see her in North Carolina one time, and my sister called me and she said, Bill's sister has a picture, and she said she'll share it with you if you promise never to put it on Facebook.
My goodness.
And I said, deal. And I've never put it on Facebook, but it's a picture of her and their cousin Virginia with Charles Manson in the middle at the Halloween dance in McMecken, West Virginia.
The Halloween dance. Now the first thing that comes out of my mind is, have you told that before? How does someone
I tell it all the time to people just in general. I don't think it's never been in a show or anything.
Very interesting. Yeah, because I was like, I remember him, because I honestly forgot that you told me that, because that whole night was just a blur down at Streets.
I can't believe I even brought that up there.
You brought that up, and there was a crowd of probably 3 other of my friends there, and I believe one of them was Ben Duty. I believe one of them was Justin Boyd, because that was whenever we got a photo together. But right after that, that's whenever you started talking to that, and I remember thinking, like, this is insane right now.
It is, yeah. I still have the photo, but on the podcast, a photo doesn't help.
Yeah, and that's why.
And I'm not going to share it.
Yeah. You got to keep that to yourself. I don't expect that at all. Speaking of a podcast, I believe you also mentioned at one point that you were going to be doing your own. Yeah. Is that still in the works here?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. So it's we're still putzing with it, and I haven't secured funding, so I don't talk a lot about it, just for, I don't want to jinx anything.
I agree with that.
So, yeah, I'm working on it, and we've done 2 interviews.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, so I'd like to have 5 under my belt before we, announce anything, or just because I want to, be underway.
You want it to be there. I get it. I get it completely. I don't like putting out, sometimes on the story, I'll put out like, I'm going to speak to this person. And I feel like anytime I put that out there, it's going to jinx it. And there's going to be like, something came up, can't come tonight, something like that. But I thought that, the podcast is interesting, because I feel like a lot of people, around here, that's what they want. They would love to hear you sit down and speak to people, because, you're very highly regarded around here. I'm curious how you yourself prepare for an interview.
Very little.
Do you?
Yeah.
How did you prepare to interview Fred Rodgers? And now let me put a pin in that question. At that point in time, can you elaborate on where you were at your career and where he was at his career, just to kind of put in perspective of it?
Yeah. I interviewed him in either late 1987 or early 1988. This is very strange. Tomorrow, July 6th,
really,
will be my 35th anniversary at WQED.
No way.
Yeah. So, I had done I had done 2 shows, I think. I did a show about organ transplants called Transplant Town. Because in 1987, Pittsburgh was the world capital of organ transplants.
Really?
More organ transplants in 1987 were done in Pittsburgh than in the rest of the world combined.
Oh my goodness.
Which is pretty amazing, yes. And that was largely because of Dr. Starzl.
Dr. Starzl.
Who was at UPMC, who had been brought here from Denver. He's the man who did the first, liver and heart, multiple organ transplants. And he was the power behind the anti-rejection drug.
Oh, wow, that people take if they get a liver transplant.
Yeah, but it's changed since then. But I'm trying to think. I can't remember the name of the drug. It'll come to me. But
that's incredible.
Yeah, and so, but he came here and made this, one of the most important, if not the most important, transplant place in the world.
I've never heard that.
Yeah. So I did a show called Transplant Town. We used to be the Steel City. Now we're the Transplant Town. And then I also did the show about the three rivers called the Mon, the Al, and the O.
Yeah.
And then my boss said, next year is Fred Rodgers' 25th anniversary with Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and we need to do a show. And she said, you got to interview Fred and all of that. And I said, okay. Well, the thing was, my first job in television was working in South Carolina for public television.
Yes.
At South Carolina ETV. And I went there as a summer intern to work on a show with Josie Carey. Josie Carey was Fred Rodgers' partner, co-producer of the first show on WQED, which was called Children's Corner.
Yeah.
That was produced by Fred Rodgers and Josie Carey. And she was the on-camera talent. You never saw Fred. He was just the puppets. The same puppets you know today.
Oh,
They were all on Children's Corner. Daniel Striped Tiger.
And she was the face, right?
She was the face of Children's Corner, yes. And then so she was doing a children's show in South Carolina called Whee! WHEEE exclamation point. Had music by Joe Negri. And it was a lot of things. And I said, I'm from Pittsburgh. I remember you. And she said, come down on your spring break and we want to meet you. And then she offered me, an internship that summer. And I took it. And so I had worked with her a lot and I heard lots of stories about Fred. So I was pretty well, schooled in Fred Rodgers. And then when I came here, I was able to watch any program that he had ever done. And I watched a lot.
Yeah.
And, then, I interviewed people around him first.
Yeah.
So, and then I set up the final, which we knew would be the big interview with Fred. And we did it in the Cathedral Mansions, which is one of those big red brick, tall apartment buildings in Oakland. It's an easy walk from WQED. In fact, we walked over and he walked back and forth with us. He had a little studio apartment there where he wrote.
Now, for him to for you to interview him at that point in time, did you work directly with him then, or was that like before?
Oh, I never worked directly with him.
Okay, yeah.
Fred Rodgers and his company, he formed a separate company called FCI, Family Communications Incorporated. They were in the building of WQED, but they were separate.
Ah.
So WQED, while they owned Children's Corner, they did not own Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. That was owned by FCI.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so now it's called the Fred Rodgers Company. And they're on the south side. It's just, he was smart enough, I guess, to realize he should, stay separate from WQED. I mean, the office is, it's now the production department at WQED in the old FCI tower, we would call it, but it's not a tower. It's just
that's cool to know, though. I mean, like that's interesting to hear. But for you to, I mean, at your career at that point, you had an internship down there that you were working on, but like you're still pretty green, right?
No, I mean that's just how I started to learn about Fred, was being an intern. I worked for 11 years in South Carolina before I got this job in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
So I started here in 1987. I had been an intern in 1973.
Ah.
Yes, I'm old, and
wise. You're wise.
But I had, I had already shown that I could do documentaries, and to do one about Fred was just really fun because I got to interview Josie too, she never left Pittsburgh. She would travel down to South Carolina to do the show, but she lived in Coriopolis.
Ah.
And, I went to her house in Coriopolis and she had all the scrapbooks and everything. So that was really great.
Wow.
And, it was fun because they would tell the same stories. And I was able to cross-cut back and forth between the two of them telling stories about Children's Corner, which is, it's sort of a tribute to Josie as well as to Fred.
Yeah.
And then, so I was in my first year at WQED.
Yes.
They gave me this sort of plum assignment. And it really was. And Fred was happy with the show, which was, a big thing. We had to make sure. I still remember I was able to reveal a couple of things for the first time. One was that people may remember that Picture Picture, which was sort of, it's funny because it was before VCRs, but Fred would walk up to a place in his wall and put in a film canister, and then it would show up on his TV. So it was kind of like a VCR, but it was before VCRs.
Really?
Yeah. So he sort of imagined that sort of technology that you could put. I mean, he didn't put a cassette because cassettes didn't exist. He put a film canister in, and actually Michael Keaton often worked behind there. And I think Fred told me that story that, there was a little window that would slide, a little thing so that he could put that film canister into just a hole in the wall.
Yeah.
And there was a little sliding thing, and he said Michael Keaton one time slid the little thing open to get the film canister and said, "I will hear your confession now, my son." And Fred laughed, and he broke. Fred.
Yeah.
And he liked that. He liked when people surprised him like that. So, but anyway, but he would show things on there about how things are made, and one of the first ones was how do light bulbs get made. And that film was created by George Romero.
Really?
Yeah, George Romero. Before he ever did any of the horror movies, before he did Night of the Living Dead and everything, he worked for Fred Rodgers making those little... He didn't work just for Fred. He had a little production company here.
Yeah.
And
how did light bulbs get made?
Yeah, he made several of those picture how-to things.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, so there's a nice connection there. And I was the first person to reveal that because they weren't sure, should they reveal that?
Yeah, that's
but
interesting.
Why not?
Yeah, why not, right?
Yeah.
Fascinating.
I'm not embarrassed by the show at all. In fact, it got redone several times. I did it as Our Neighbor Fred Rodgers.
Yeah.
And then we made a national show of it, also called Our Neighbor Fred Rodgers, because PBS was interested in it. And that was my first national show. But they didn't want my voice.
Really?
Yeah, because, I was just some guy in Pittsburgh. They wanted a celebrity voice. And so we used David Hartman, who at that time was the host of Good Morning America on ABC.
Really?
Yeah. And so I got to go to New York and work with him in a studio and all of that. It was very interesting.
How old were you at this time?
I would have been 35, 36, something like that.
So that would be, that's like an exciting thing in work.
It was great fun.
Yeah.
But then later, that same show, after Fred died, it was remade again and narrated by Michael Keaton. And I got to go to L.A. for that taping, too.
I think I do remember hearing how it was redone with Michael Keaton. I remember that being like a big talking point on it.
Yeah. So
fascinating.
Yeah, because Michael Keaton had worked with him and heard his confession.
Yeah. Now, have you always been, I know that we talked about it in the first interview. I'm sure a lot of people they probably haven't listened, but you said that you were always very curious. You will always interview anyone about anything. And I think that that's somehow, the way I kind of look at it too, because, I really will have pretty much anyone on, and I just like kind of unpacking people and kind of figuring it out. Now, did you have any sort of like nerves ever about whenever you're interviewing someone?
No, because I tend to think there's no stupid questions.
Yeah. Do you think that?
Yeah, I think that.
Yeah, I think that too. I
mean, and you know what? If you're scared, ask simpler questions.
Yeah.
Especially because the way I put the shows together, I don't want to hear my question.
That's a good point.
Because I cut them so that it's just the response. And so I'm big on, how do you do this? Or, why do you do this kind of thing? But, part of the thing is just making the person feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And actually, I've talked to students, who want to be filmmakers and stuff about it. And I think one of the most important things is what you put out, you will get back exactly. In other words, if you're up and bright and engaged, the person will be too. And so you got to do that. And, if you don't care, and sometimes you can see this on the news, the reporter just doesn't care. And, the energy level is down and they're sort of like bored or, oh, do I have to answer questions? These kind of things. And you can tell that in the interview.
Yeah, that's true. People reciprocate that.
Right. And I'm sort of blessed with this face that looks like I'm smiling even when I'm not smiling. And I know that helps. That, it makes people feel up a little bit. And I remember one time a guy called me after I did the hot dog show for PBS.
Yeah.
And he goes, I'm ready to quit my job and open a hot dog shop because you know what? All those people look so happy in their jobs. And I said, well, I think part of that is because I'm happy in my job. And when I go to interview them, I'm happy and I'm doing what I want to do and I make them look happy.
Yeah.
They may not be happy, but, I'm usually not grilling anyone. I'm not asking any hard-hitting questions or anything like that. I'm just asking people about things they enjoy or things that they know about.
Yeah, how to display their passions through words.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a certain way to dance about it. Like I'm in my almost at my 5th year of interviewing people. I've done over 200. So like, I honestly feel like whenever I interviewed Josh Getzoff, he was episode 199. I felt like every interview I've done before that, I critiqued myself. I felt like in that moment, because I was like, oh, this is Josh Getzoff. He's the announcer of the Penguins. I'm nervous. I just didn't know him really. I never met him. So, I just don't know how people are going to be when they're in here. If they're reserved, if they have different expectations. But my wife is, she knows I get excited and I try to put a limit on my excitement because I have word vomit. I just talk and talk, but it's so interesting to kind of hear about, people's passions and listening to them talk and, kind of just listening more. I really, it's so hard for me to just listen. Have you ever had that as an interviewer where you were, how do you say, I feel like I'm a bully in conversations because, I feel that I like try to, if I have any sort of nervousness, I try to talk it out real quick or, I always just try to talk and keep the ball rolling. And I tend to not just sit back and listen to my guest.
Interesting. No, in fact, I forget where I heard this or read this or someone told me this, but no, silence is often a really good thing because that person also feels it and wants to fill that silence. And it often brings out something unexpected or, something that you would never ask about.
That's interesting.
Yeah, just, in a moment's pause, like, when you say, let me gather my thoughts or something like that, and the person can say, well, I want to tell you about this. So, yeah, it's not terrible, especially because things get edited.
Yeah.
And if it really is a blank spot or something, you just edit it out.
That's true.
But, no, and I got to interview August Wilson.
Yeah.
And in New York City. And, he's just such a great talker. With, minimal questions, he would tell wonderful, wonderful stories and all of that. And I watched that whole thing because I put together a show during the pandemic. It's called Brain, Space, and Energy.
Yeah.
I asked him if he was having fun. And he said, yeah, it is fun. He said, but sometimes, I need brain space and energy.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. Because he's just too many things pulling him different ways and everything. And he wants to keep writing and then, but people are coming to interview him.
Yeah.
He was Pittsburgher of the Year. And that's why we went up there. It was just before Christmas. And, that's a really, an interview I remember a lot. When you ask me if I ever get scared, and the only time I'm scared is if I'm assigned to do a sports interview because I don't know sports. And
has that happened a lot?
No. I
Yeah.
did one sports show. My buddy Sam Hall, who does the helicopter traffic reports on Channel 4 in the mornings, and he's in our business office. After he does that in the morning at Channel 4, he comes over to Channel 13, and he's in our business office. he has the poster from that show in his office.
Yeah.
They were Pittsburghers of the Year in like 1988 or 89.
That's when you did the show?
Yeah.
Oh,
I interviewed
wow.
Jim Leland, I remember.
Wow.
But if you aren't a sports fan, and I'm not,
Yeah.
it's something that it's a part of life that there's just so many people that are obsessed with that and are happy to be doing that. And I don't pay attention to it.
That's 1,000,000% how I feel about, I'm new into the beer world. I never drank ever really, but going back to Josh Getzoff again, I often ask people what they want to drink, and he picked an IPA, and he asked me, he said, why aren't you interviewing people that are, creating great beer around here? Because like Pittsburgh, we're spoiled with how much greatness is around us. And I was like, that's a great point. But, I never drank. So, I had, a few Miller Lights or Bud Lights. So I never just could, I wanted to be educated in a certain sense to be able to speak to these people who are brewing some of the greatest beer in the city. Right. So what I did was I just, I studied. I had a different beer from different places for a month and a half, and, tried to just develop like what I liked about it. And, just was able to talk to someone in some sort of, educated manner where I didn't sound like a fool. Right. You know what I mean?
No, I know that too. Yeah. But I guess maybe I'm, a little closer to beer. So
yeah.
But still, I'm not really exactly sure, like, what makes a lager versus what makes the,
Yeah, I don't get too far into the weeds, but I want to be able to say, like, I like an IPA. I know what an IPA is. I know what a stout, things like that. Yeah. I'm curious, in this world that we're in right now, you said, some time ago in this career. Right. And I feel like, I was trying to think about the differences to what you would have expected and what you've dealt with when you started compared to what it is now. And I feel like back then, in our previous conversation, we talked about TV and how, it's not necessarily as utilized as it was.
It's not as pervasive.
Pervasive, yeah. It's not as pervasive as that. But, back then you're creating content to focus around a television set that, usually families would gather around and sit down. They didn't have too many other things to, take away their attention. In today's world, I feel like the content that is designed to be in its most snackable form, short things to consume. Do you have any sort of, what's the right word? Do you have any sort of like troubles kind of cutting your content to be as snackable as it can? I mean, no. I don't mind that at all. In fact, I've done 90-minute shows and even longer than that, but they're usually all a collection of 4 and 5 minute stories. I don't mind pulling them out at all. My trouble is I can't remember where the stories are in which show. Like, I know I did a story about that, and is it in Pittsburgh A to Z, or is it in 25 Things I Like About Pittsburgh, or, is it in Flying Off the Bridge to Nowhere? Or what? I just don't know where the stories are, and I should have that better in my head. I mean, sometimes it's easy if it's a hot dog place or if it's an amusement park or a cemetery, all these shows that I've done. But, I don't mind excerpting them at all. In fact, I find them better that way. Yeah, snackable.
Snackable is a good term, yeah. And we've been doing some of that. In fact, just this morning on my walk, I was thinking about Slim Bryant.
Slim Bryant.
Slim Bryant and the Wildcats were a country band here in town. And Slim Bryant actually played with the great Jimmy Rodgers, one of the starters of country music. And he lived to be like 103 or 104 in Dormont, Slim Bryant.
Yeah.
And I interviewed him, I think when he was like 99 or 100.
Wow.
Still sharp as a tack. And he still taught guitar, I believe. But actually, he wrote a song which Jimmy Rodgers recorded, which you'll find on almost every collection of Jimmy Rodgers songs, called Mother, Queen of My Heart. A song to his mother. Yeah. And that was a major claim to fame. He also had a slight hit song, a novelty song, with a little song called Itsy Bitsy, Eeny Meeny Ditsy Deeny.
Eeny, meeny, ditsy, deeny.
Yeah, and it's totally fun. And I got him. He had arthritis in his hands, and it was hard. But he played that for me because I was so excited.
Wow.
To meet the man who wrote Eeny, Meeny, Ditsy, Deeny. And I don't know where that story is, but I thought we should get that back out and put it out again. Actually, because I saw that my friend Tom Roberts had posted something. He's a 78 record collector.
Yeah.
And he had something on there about Jimmy Rogers and Slim Bryant. Slim Bryant and the Wildcats were sort of the house band at KDKA TV when it began.
Ah, wow.
And they were on the very first program produced in Pittsburgh, which was for WDTV. That was the first TV station in Pittsburgh, WDTV, which became KDKA.
Ah, never heard of that.
Yeah, WDTV, and their first show was recorded or was broadcast from, it wasn't recorded, it was broadcast. I guess there's not a copy of it, although somebody should have made a kinescope, which is how they would have preserved it at the time. Which was
kinescope?
Kinescope is a movie of the video.
Oh.
Huh. And they would set a movie camera in front of a TV screen and just record it. That's how we have some children's corners.
That would make sense.
But Slim Bryant and Wildcats were on that first show at Syria Mosque, and I want to say 1949. 1948 or 49 is the first TV show in Pittsburgh, and they're on it. And so, it was fun to talk to someone who was on the very first television program ever made in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
But, that would be a really juicy snack right now if I could find it. And
if you could find it. Do you have a lot of just content that is just, in the file folder, so to speak?
Well, no, it's on a shelf. In December of 2020, my editor, Kevin, passed away.
Oh.
He had been fighting cancer for 10 years. But I didn't realize how much he knew. If I said to him, I said, "Where's that Slim Bryant story?" He'd know where to go get it exactly.
Yeah.
And we lost that. And
Keymaster.
Yeah. So, and I always think, I need to go back there and make a log of everything that's there so I know what's there.
Yeah.
And I've never done that, but that could be a project.
Is there content there that is produced content that was never aired?
No, everything aired.
Okay, yeah,
and that aired. And actually, I think I have a DVD of it. But I remember when we made the DVD, the audio levels were wrong and it distorts. So I want to find the original tape.
Probably can clean it up now.
I don't know if I don't want to find that distorted thing.
the original.
I want to find the original, which would still be okay, because when it aired, it was fine. It was just when we made the DVD of it that it got...
We need the good source of it now.
Yes. So maybe this will inspire me.
Now, like I said, I had some listener questions. I want to, I know I don't want to keep you too long. I want to run through some of these if possible.
Yeah, let's try it.
Okay, so I got some good ones here that are very interesting. Do you binge watch TV shows at all?
Very occasionally. I don't watch enough TV.
Is there anything that you've watched in recent that really got you going that you enjoyed?
The last thing that I can remember is Schitt's Creek.
Oh, that was fantastic.
Yeah.
It was a hilarious show.
And that was my friend Kathy Niederberger said to me, "You got to watch this show." And, she...
My wife was watching it, and I love Eugene Levy, and his son is great too, obviously. Okay, what is your favorite ride at Kennywood?
The auto race or the auto ride. It's got both names.
Auto race or the auto ride?
Yeah, that's the thing that's right next to Kittyland.
Oh, yeah.
Those cars that a little person can sit in the
front. Are those still there?
Yeah. That's one of the oldest rides in the park, and it was made by the Travers Amusement Company from Beaver Falls.
I believe they also made the Turtles.
Yes, they did. They made a lot of rides, and but that auto race I just love. I've always loved it.
That's something that I always ride. Now, what is your least favorite ride at Kennywood?
My least favorite ride at Kennywood. That's hard. Things I've never ridden.
Are there rides you've never ridden? Are you not a spinny person?
Yeah, I'm not a spinny person, but there used to be the thing that had two little capsules on the end of a long
salt and pepper shakers.
I don't know if that's not what it was called.
No, it wasn't, but it was over in Lost Kennywood. where you get off the Steel Phantom. It was like it would go like this and spin.
Yep, that's it. Yeah, I never rode that.
Yeah, them things were crazy. I remember I was pretty all right with roller coasters, but that was like the only thing that like kind of made me queasy.
Roller coasters are my favorite. You know, I've not yet been out there to be. I wasn't not been there on the day when the Steeler coaster has been running. So.
I know. I got to make sure I'm there for whenever it's up and going as well. Okay, do you have any hidden talents or hobbies? And they said in brackets, Rubik's Cube or solves puzzles upside down, question marks. So do you have any hidden talents like that?
No, I do play Wordle every day.
Wordle?
Yeah.
Are you pretty good at it?
I'm fairly good at it. I have a friend in South Carolina. She gets upset if it's like it takes her more than 4. I don't care. I just don't want to. I don't want to not get it.
Have you ever gotten one in the first try?
Not on the first try because I heard somebody talking about it and they said they always started with the word adieu.
Yeah.
And I do.
Ah.
So I've never gotten it on that, but that's ADIEU.
Yeah.
It makes me always think of Sound of Music. Adieu to you and you and you. So I have gotten it on the second one.
Yeah, that's good. I usually will start with steak.
Okay.
Because STEAK, STEA, those are good words to start with.
Yep, letters.
Letters, sorry. Fascinating that something so simple like that could take over, take the world by storm.
It's a brilliant game, I think.
It is.
I mentioned my friend, and she gets so upset, and I think, like, no, this is a game, and, you know, she feels stupid if it takes her more than 4, but she also, you know, has rightly identified the curse of the rhyming words.
Ah.
You can not get it just because you have IGHT at the end.
Yeah.
And it can be fight and sight and light. And,
I know.
You know,
it's terrible.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll have like the last 3 or the last 4, and you go through the whole thing. Do you play any? Do you do word searches crosswords or anything like that?
I do the mini puzzle, the New York Times mini puzzle every day, and I also do the.
Sudoku?
Yes, the Sudoku in the New York Times every day.
I have. I want to try a word crossword puzzle. I just listened to someone talk about it on a podcast. He was like he's like 32 or something like that. He was like, I remember my grandfather doing it. He was like, I just started picking them up, and he loves it.
Well, you know, and I love this too. You know, start out with the Monday puzzles.
Monday puzzles.
Yeah, the puzzle gets harder as the week goes on. Monday is always easy.
Is that right?
Tuesday's a little harder. Wednesday's a little harder. Thursday's a little harder. Friday's a little. Saturday is killer.
I've never known that.
Yeah.
So it increases with the days.
Yes, increases as the week goes on, and then Sunday's the big one in the New York Times, which I haven't done in a long time. I used to do it in college.
Wow.
I was going to say, you know, I like the question hidden talents, but I can't think of anything. You know, I like to cook. Is that a hidden talent? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a hidden talent. Some people. You know, you never know.
I make great cookies.
That's good that you said the cowboy cookies. That's pretty good. I learned how to do a Rubik's Cube. That's like my only hidden talent. I could just do a Rubik's.
You can do it really fast?
Not very fast. My fastest was like a minute maybe.
Okay.
It's not terrible. World record I think now is like 4.21 seconds. That's a human being doing it.
Right.
4.1 seconds. Okay. It said, I know you have vinyl nights. I'm curious, growing up, what sort of ritual did you have listening to a record? You know, where did you go buy? And I read this question, and my thought was, where did you go buy? Did you have a record store? And, you know, were you someone that just consumed it, like sat down, listened to it all the way?
I am old enough that I bought a lot of singles.
Singles.
A lot of 45s. I had a little case that you could open up. It was like a leather case that had the thing in there and had the speakers and everything. And so, yeah, I know the first album I ever owned was Herman's Hermits.
That's my wife and her mother.
It was their first album. Early editions of it say, I'm into something good, which is a song that I love. And then later editions, they replaced that line with Mrs. Brown, You've Got a Lovely Daughter.
Really?
Which was a big hit.
Is that Peter Noonan, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm into something good. Woke up this morning feeling fine. There's something special on my mind. That's a Carole King song, which they performed. And I really like it too. Then I got that for Easter one year when I was trying to lose weight because I was a chubby kid anyway. And my mother, instead of giving me chocolates, got me an album because she knew I was interested in records. And that was my first album. We had some other records that were in the family. We had a lot of soundtrack. I mean, not soundtracks, but Broadway musicals and stuff like that. And then the first album that I bought myself, I bought at Horns at South Hills Village.
Horns,
when Horns was at one of the anchor stores at the South Hills Village. I bought Between the Buttons by the Rolling Stones, which had Ruby Tuesday and Let's Spend the Night Together on it.
I just listened to an interview with Keith Richards that Mark Maron did the other day, and it's fantastic. Like, just a guy that's just, been through it all, and just to hear him talk about it all, it's just amazing. If you weren't the person you became today, what would you be doing right now? And as I read this question, I imagined it as asking, if you were going to do a different career, what would it be?
I think something food. I think I'd like to be a chef or run a restaurant or something like that.
Has that ever been in your mind that you wanted to do that?
Yeah, it's always in my mind, I think.
I mean, as
I've
far
never
as a
done it.
career, back before you became.
No, I've always been enthusiastic about food.
Yeah.
And,
easy to be enthusiastic about it.
Yeah.
It's delicious.
And I don't know if you know that I think it's an essay by W.H. Auden where he says, we shouldn't have statues to military people. We should have them to chefs.
You actually referred to that in the last question.
Oh yeah,
cool. Yeah. You said, or the last
time I was
interview.
on.
Yeah.
All right.
You said that you read him a good bit. Okay. It says, how much do you love your car? I thought that was good because the first time I met you, you just got your car, I believe.
No.
No.
That would have been 2.5 years ago. No, I was still driving. I had just gotten my second Element.
That might have been it. I think it was. It was the Element.
I drove a Honda Element for 18 years.
That was it. It was the Honda Element.
Yeah.
Because you were jazzed up about getting the Element, but then you got your car now.
Right, a Mini Cooper.
A Mini Cooper, that's it, yeah.
It's a convertible Mini Cooper.
You love it?
I love it so much, I'm embarrassed.
Is that the first convertible you've had?
Yeah, I always liked my Element, and but I love this car.
Yeah.
I'll drive to Cannonsburg to do a podcast.
That's much appreciated. Shout out to Mini Cooper.
No, it's just, the roof comes up and down so fast. I can do it at a stoplight.
Was that something that you had your eyes on whenever you were looking for a car?
I had always thought about it. I always thought, is my parking area behind my house big enough to have my Element and a Mini Cooper? I don't know. I've always liked the way they looked.
Yeah.
And then I had taken my Element, the one that I would have just gotten maybe after when I met you, and I took it in to get an oil change and get ready to drive down to North Carolina to my sister's, and I was sitting in the waiting room, and the guy came out and he goes, Rick, you don't want to hear this, but you need a new car. And I said, he goes, it's going to cost more than the car is worth to fix it. And I said, oh, so can you make it run well enough that I can go find a new car? And he said, yeah. And I said, okay, so let's do that. And, so I paid that bill and I got the car. And the next morning I went to the Honda dealer. And, it was just so boring. I couldn't believe it. And in order to drive from the Honda dealer in Bloomfield back to WQED in my dying Element, I had to drive past the Mini Cooper place. And I thought, maybe this is it. Maybe this is the time when I go in. And
meant to be.
I went in and I said, I'm looking for a new car. I would only consider a convertible. And the young salesman said, well, it's odd, we have one right now. He said, do you want to take it for a ride? And I said, yeah, it would have been, not at this time last summer, but just before this, because it took 9 weeks to get it.
Oh, wow.
And I had to keep praying that my Element would last for 9 weeks. I got in the car to take it for a test drive, and the guy goes, I'm really sorry, but by COVID restrictions, we're not allowed to go with you. You can only do this alone. And I said, oh, that's so terrible.
Terrible. How am I ever going to make it?
And so I just drove all around, and I drove back to my house, and I took a neighbor for a ride and did all this stuff. I drove down into Frick Park. I just thought it was so cool. I talked to some neighbors. I said, "What do you think? Does this work? Oh yeah, go for it." And so I then drove back, not realizing, oh my God, they'd closed, but they were open, waiting for me to get back with the car.
Oh my God!
And so I said, I'm so sorry, but I'll call you in the morning. And I called in the morning and I said, I'm going to do this, and I thought I drove my car over to Munhall and I vacuumed it and cleaned it and everything because it was going to be my trade-in.
Yeah.
And I came home, I was going to take a shower, and I called the guy and I said, I'm coming in and, find out what this is going to cost and all of that. And he said, great, we'll be waiting for you. And I took a shower. And when I came out, my phone rang. And it was him. And he said, Rick, I'm so sorry. We just sold the car. So I said, And he said, I said, I'm coming by anyway because I want to hear what are my options.
Yeah.
And so I ended up, I like the white one better than that blue one that I test drove.
Ah, okay. So that was the difference. Color.
No, yeah. And so.
Mini Cooper.
Mini Cooper, yeah, I'm a big fan. I just
That's fantastic. My tattoo artist got a Countryman, and he speaks very highly about him. He loves it, and he was the first person that I had that I got to peek inside his. Really cool.
No, actually, but I always feel a little bit sorry for people that have Mini Coopers that aren't convertibles.
That's fair. That's a fair point. That's definitely a fair point. Okay.
My cameraman Frank Caliero. He went right after I got out. I drove it out to his house in the North Hills just to show off and everything. And he said, I don't want to I want to drive for a while. And then he said, this is amazing. He said, this is Kennywood all the time. You feel like you're on a ride at Kennywood in this car. And I think that's pretty true.
That's it. Look how perfect that is. That's how much of a professional you are. The next question was, I would really like to know how the Kennywood Memories project came to be. But we talked about it in the last episode. You said that you had that idea during your interview.
Not during my interview. I had actually, I first mentioned it in an application to grad school. I applied to the University of Southern California. I was, when I wasn't finding a job after graduating, I was thinking about grad school. And, there was a thing about what kind of, film would you like to make? And I said, I'd like to do a documentary about Kennywood, the amusement park in Pittsburgh. So I had that idea already. But then when I came to my job interview, the woman who hired me, Nancy Lavin, said, I had shown them my documentary that I made in South Carolina called Shag, about the state dance. And she said, we'll have to find something like Shag for you to do here. And I said, I could do Kennywood. And she said, ew, that amusement park. She was from San Francisco. And I said, yeah, you know what? It's really important to people here. Kennywood is really important. And she said, okay, we'll see. And then I told you I did Transplant Town. I did the Three Rivers show. I did the Fred Rodgers show. And then the summer of 1988, she said, you know what? Call Kennywood. Let's see if you can make that Kennywood program. So, that's how it started. I called Kennywood.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Because I wasn't a known commodity. I'd done those shows. But,
yeah.
It's not until Kennywood Memories that people start to really start paying attention. So
till you became who you are. But Kennywood, that's it's wild that's still such a heavy hitter, so to speak. I just looked on Facebook. They have a group called Kennywood Behind the Screams.
Yeah.
And it's people talking about Gino, Chambord, Devin.
Chambordon.
Yeah, Chambordon.
Gino Chambordon.
Falling down the slope. And it's pretty crazy how important it was to Pittsburgh and how important it still is.
Well, yeah. And actually, the guy who was the program director when I started at QED, Sam Silberman, is still alive. And he's a good buddy of mine. And I go see him. And he's always says, he says, you are the luckiest producer because people will still watch that Kennywood show.
Still do it.
Yeah.
We watched it not long ago.
Actually, there's a new film club in Allentown.
July 21st at Bottle Rocket.
No.
It's the next event. 7th. This will be out the day after.
Oh, okay.
So the 7th, you have the Kennywood Memories showing at Bottle Rocket.
Right.
I'll post that. But the one that people will be able to go to is on the 21st.
Okay, and I think that's going to be the strip show,
That's the strip show.
which I also love. And you know,
I don't know if I've ever seen that one. I have to see it.
oh, it has some really wonderful moments too. So
I'm gonna have to look at that. Now, the last couple questions that were pretty interesting. Now, favorite place to grab a beer? I feel like that you already said you frequented
Piper's Pub, but it's been closed since the beginning of the pandemic.
I know, we got to get that back open.
Right now, I would have to say Golden Age Brewing in Homestead, or Independent Brewing where I play records, because although I don't drink when I'm playing records, unless there's someone to come to play with me.
Yeah.
And then if they have a drink, I'll have a drink.
Yeah, they keep you in line.
Social guy, you know.
Do you have any food spots that you keep secret because they're too special?
No, because I mean, if you wanted, you know, like my top 10, I would say pretty much the same things. And Mainam Thai in Blawnox, the little Thai restaurant that I love. And just today I was talking with my buddy Manette, and we were talking about getting over to Amel's in Rankin, which has always been a great favorite of mine. And, you know, I love the sushi at Mola in East Liberty, and, you know.
Endless.
Yeah, I mean, it goes on and on. I guess Mola's never been in a show, but I haven't had a way to work it in. Maybe I could interview him for a podcast.
Yeah, you should. You should. Why not? Okay. This was an interesting question that I feel that was important to ask because, you know, you being who you are, you're often, you know, you highlight the things in our city. But someone asked, has Pittsburgh changed in any ways that made you sad or disappointed over the years?
That's a good question. Well, only when I see things go away.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. I mean, the O.
Yeah, it's crazy.
The O's gone. That makes Pittsburgh a different city. This woman that I mentioned who hired me, Nancy Lavin, she used to always say, the O is the most urban place in Pittsburgh. You know, it's frequented by blacks and whites, and everybody goes to the O. And it's a great leveler, and it's open. At that time, it was open all night, and they hadn't been open 24 hours a day for quite some time. But the very first show that I did in Pittsburgh, Transplant Town, I got to interview Dr. Starzl. And we asked for permission to follow him in for a surgery, which is really complicated to bring a camera crew in for surgery, a major surgery. But we got the permission of the people and all of this, and it was all set up, and we had to be there at like 4 a.m. to get outfitted and all of that. And we did all of that, and we were there at UPMC, and something happened, and the organ didn't come.
Really?
Yeah. So it was like 8 o'clock in the morning. And we disrobed, and Dr. Starzl says, I'm famished. Let's go to the O. That was the first time I went to the O.
Wow.
Was with Dr. Starzl.
What a legendary time.
To get a hot dog in the morning, and when we got down there, he goes, I don't have any money. He goes, I'll find a med student. And he did. So it was great. It was, I miss the O. That's, I guess that's what disappoints many people.
Yeah, things that go away.
Things that go away. And, that's the first one that comes to mind immediately. And it's not in, it's in my hot dog show, but it's not in things that aren't there anymore, but it's not there anymore.
All right. That's great. Okay.
That's it?
I would be remiss if I didn't, I'm going to cut the Desert Island questions very, very short, but I just want to ask a couple things. Ending segment that I do with all my guests is an ending segment called Desert Island Questions.
I think I remember this.
Oh, yeah. Okay, we'll do this. We'll do a speed round of this because I'm conscious of the time. 3 things to watch on a desert island. So if you got to pick 3 movies to watch, you could pick 1, you could pick 3, you could pick whatever.
I would take Terry Gilliam's Brazil. I would take maybe The Wizard of Oz.
Wizard of Oz. I feel like you might have said that last time.
I said that the last. I just have always liked that movie a lot, and a Wes Anderson movie.
Very interesting. Quirky.
The Darjeeling Express or something like that.
It's good answers. Okay. What is your favorite project that you've done? I usually ask people 3 books, but I really want to know, like, what is your favorite? Like, is Kennywood Memories your favorite?
Well, it's a favorite, and I say that's always a very hard question because they're like your children. But no, I usually respond that my favorite is a hot dog program.
Hot dog program.
Yeah, because it was the first time I'd been there for almost 10 years. And it was the first time I was able to handpick my crew, which I learned made a huge difference.
Yeah.
And, it was just people I wanted to work with. I'd worked with everybody. Now I could say, like, this is the person I want to work with, and I want to work with this person, and that kind of thing. And it just worked out. And that was a national program. I think, in general, I like the local shows better.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I like a hot dog program. And sandwiches, which followed it, which also was total delight.
Yeah, those were great. I did. That's one of my favorites, the sandwich one, for sure.
Yeah.
Love that. Okay, third category. If you got to pick 3 CDs to listen to over and over again, or album, whatever.
No, I have a huge CD collection too. Okay, a collection it could be. I mean, I have a set of Hoagie Carmichael that I love.
Who is it?
Hoagie Carmichael.
Hoagie Carmichael.
Yes, he wrote Stardust. And he played the piano, and he was an actor in some movies and stuff like that. But a great American composer. But he also played piano and was famous for performing his own songs as well. But in addition to Stardust, I'm trying to think what else. I mean, he wrote the song that my parents said was their song, Old Buttermilk Sky.
Old Buttermilk Sky.
Yeah, so I just love Hoagie Carmichael, so I could always listen to Hoagie Carmichael.
I'll give you the whole discography of Hoagie Carmichael.
All right, and then I would want to take a John Prine. And
R.I.P.
Yes, he was the first person who died during the pandemic that I just thought, like, what a loss. And
was that the pandemic?
I think he died of COVID.
Huh. That does sound familiar.
He'd had a lot of problems.
Health issues, for sure.
He had major cancer and everything, I think, but he has that album of duets, In Spite of Ourselves, which I really, really love. And, that would be one that I would really like to take. And I could have one more. There's an unusual performer named Nelly Nelly Mackay.
Nelly Mackay.
I've seen her several times here in town. She's a national performer, but I saw her twice, I think, at the Warhol. And that just makes me think of Jonathan Richman, too, whom I love, Jonathan Richman and the Modern Lovers. That could be my third, or it could be Nelly Mackay.
I'll give you both.
All right, okay. Her first album was a double album, lots of good songs, but she's done lots of really interesting projects since then.
I've never heard of her. I'm going to have to look her up.
Yeah, and I saw her once at the Club Cafe on the South Side as well.
I like that venue.
Yeah. So a Nelly Mackay and then the Jonathan Richman and the Modern Lovers. I saw him at the Decade first, I think. And he's most famous, I guess, that the movie Something About Mary?
Yeah.
He wrote all the music for that.
Really?
Yeah. But before that, he was famous for the song Roadrunner.
What an accolade to have. All the music and Something About Mary.
Roadrunner, going faster miles an hour. And that became the theme song for the documentary that was done about the chef who died, who committed suicide.
Yeah, Anthony Bourdain.
Yeah,
it was called Roadrunner.
And they used that song.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and that's a song by Jonathan Richman. He wrote it, but he performed with the Modern Lovers, who originally included Jerry Harrison, who would later go on to be in Talking Heads. And that's a band I also love. So I could take Speaking in Tongues as a alternate to some of these.
That's all right. I'll give you all that. That's good. Those are good answers for sure.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to listen to the duets, John Prine. I'm late to him, very late to John Prine.
Oh, no, that's that. And that one is totally fun. And especially that song, In Spite of Ourselves.
I'm going to definitely check that out. Okay. Third to last question. Okay.
There's more? 3 more?
There's 3 more questions.
Okay.
Third to last question is something called the Death Row Meal. So the Death Row Meal... before you're put to death, you get one last meal. You get an appetizer, a main course, and a dessert.
I want some sort of chunky soup for the appetizer, like a clam chowder, or
Are you a New England or Manhattan?
I could go either way. Although I think in New England clam chowders are not as thick as they are here.
Yeah.
You know, the broth is thinner, which I like, which makes it closer, I guess, to a Manhattan, because Manhattan is like a tomato base. But and a main course, I would probably want some sort of shrimp dish.
Shrimp?
Yeah.
Wow, I would never expect that.
Yeah? What do you think I was going to say? A steak?
Steak is definitely the default answer. Everyone's like, "Oh, I'd love a big steak and a potato." That's not ever my answer. Neither is shrimp. I'm
Really? No, see, and although, you know, if it's your last thing and you can have anything you want, I did get to take a crew one time to Australia. And in Australia, they have this strange seafood that I've never seen here, called a Moreton Bay bug.
Moreton Bay bug.
Yeah. And I loved them. I tried to have them every meal. You know, I would say.
What do they look like?
They look somewhat like a scallop.
Oh, okay.
It's a shellfish.
I immediately envisioned a pill bug.
Oh,
like a
yeah.
roly-poly.
No, it's a seafood. It's a you know, an aquatic animal.
Yeah.
A Moreton Bay bug. And and for dessert, I'd want a piece of pie. Maybe a slice of coconut cream pie from the Grand Bar in Millville.
Coconut cream pie. That's good. That's a good answer. Okay. Second to last, most telling question. If you're getting ready for a road trip and you go to a gas station to get a snack, what's the last snack? What's your snack of choice?
A bag of popcorn.
Popcorn?
Yeah.
What kind? Regular?
Regular. Actually,
Butter.
I'm addicted to. There's a kind of popcorn. It's put up by Popcornopolis, and it's called Nearly Naked Popcorn. I really love that stuff.
Oh, yeah. I think I know exactly what you're talking about.
I found it at Big Lots first, I think. They make a giant bag of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of them department stores like that and TJ Maxx, they got some slept on snacks. They really do. Okay. And the last question that I ask everyone is, if you could have a conversation with anyone alive or dead, who would it be and why?
It's funny. I think my mom and dad first. If I could talk to anyone alive or dead.
That's a fair question. A loved one, a mother or father. But if you had to choose someone that was not a loved one.
Right. Alive or dead, did you say?
Anyone, alive or dead. It could be real or fake. Could be a fictional character if you would like.
No. I would. I think I might say Vladimir Nabokov.
I don't know. I don't know who that is.
He's the man who wrote the book Lolita. And I just have always liked his stuff very much, and he's a very interesting character. He's from Russia, but he wrote first in French, and then he wrote in English. And, you know, his books are really wonderful, and that's who. Yeah, if I could meet Vladimir Nabokov, that would be really happy.
That's a good answer. You said French. I just spoke to someone that was from Lyon, and I listened in the last podcast conversation. You said that you studied abroad over there.
Yeah, I lived for a year in Lyon.
Yeah, are you familiar with Anaïs from Chantal's Cheese Shop in Bloomfield? Oh, you should. She is fantastic. She was my most recent interview. Anaïs and her husband opened Chantal's Cheese Shop in Bloomfield. And they are...
Where is it in Bloomfield?
It is on Penn. It's, I think, Penn and 41st, right on the corner. But they're fantastic. The episode was amazing. But she grew up in Lyon, moved over here, or she moved to California first, I believe, and then moved to New York, and then moved to Pittsburgh.
Oh, there used to be a chef downtown who had a restaurant downtown, and he was from Lyon. But I have great memories of Lyon.
You got to go to
Lyon
the
was
cheese
kind
shop.
of like the Pittsburgh of France.
That's what you said, and that was. I thought that was so interesting to even bring up because I wanted to tell her that because obviously I was interviewing her and talking to her about growing up in France in Lyon, and she, we were talking about like the differences and things, and it's interesting. I wanted to send her that clip of you saying that, just so she kind of hears it because
but it also calls itself the world capital of gastronomy.
Gastronomy.
Yeah, the art of eating and cooking.
Yeah.
They are so proud of all their foods.
Just talking to this woman about cheese was, mind blowing. Very, very great.
I may listen to that tomorrow morning as I go for a walk.
Absolutely. But Rick, I am very thankful to have you over here. I appreciate you as usual. Please take a second and promote anything you have coming up, your events, anything you got that is on the book.
I think we've handled all that. I'm doing those things up there at
Bottle
Rocket, and there is a podcast of sorts. A new competitor for you.
It's coming to be.
Coming to be. And that's about it. I'm just plugging along, but still having fun.
Yeah, that's the main thing, and I feel like you could tell. It's always great to see you pop up at an event, and I appreciate you to take some time and talk to me. Oh, last question: favorite Morrissey song? Do you have one?
Wow.
I'm not a big Morrissey. It's not that I dislike them. I just never really spent.
I like the sound of Morrissey's voice.
Yeah.
But I don't know that any song comes to mind.
That's a great answer. I said that I would ask it though. Because I was like, does he listen to Morrissey? I'll ask it. And he was like, oh yeah, I saw it at record night.
I think I would probably say a Smith song rather than a Morrissey song. But
that's good too.
What's the difference?
What's the difference? How do people find out whenever you're having these vinyl nights or anything like that? Is there like
it's Wednesday nights?
Every Wednesday night?
So far, yeah. I mean, I took 3 weeks off when I went to North Carolina, but
we're back. We're back, baby.
I'm there all summer if they'll have me.
Rick Sebak on Instagram. You know where to find him. Everyone knows who he is. Again, thank you for everyone that's listening. Appreciate it as usual. Next week we got another great guest from the city doing great things. Thanks for listening. Call you right back.